Many missing as 100-passenger vessel capsizes on the high seas between Cross River and Cameroon. Kaduna State to begin paying new minimum wage from September. In international news, Brazil to reject $22 million aid fund from G7 countries in fighting raging Amazon fires. And in sport, Flying Eagles face Mali for final slot at the ongoing African Games.
This is ANN News.
A vessel that left Calabar on Sunday with 100 passengers en route to Cameroon is reported to have capsized in the high seas. The fate of those on board is not yet known. Reports say the boat tumbled in the Gulf of Guinea between Niumda and Edina in Cameroon. Authorities are said to have learned of the incident on Monday afternoon. A Cameroon Navy official is reported to have claimed 200 passengers were on board. The boat was heading to Tico Wharf in Cameroon's southwest region. He's also quoted as saying the Cameroon Navy rescued 100 passengers while 90 others were still missing. The Navy officer is said to have disclosed that the cause of the accident was unclear, but the preliminary investigation showed the ship encountered rough seas. Sokoto State says it has taken steps to enhance people's lives by signing an agreement on Monday with United Nations agencies. Governor Aminu Tambuwal said his government will increase collaborations with UN agencies to also improve environmental development in the state. The agreement, called Spotlight Initiative, is for a UN project to eliminate violence against women and girls, was signed in Sokoto. Tambuwal said his government's priority since inception has been on education because it facilitated empowerment where it declared a state of emergency in the sector. He lauded the positive impact of the effort on enrollment, retention, and completion, as well as infrastructural developments. United Nations Secretary General's representative in Nigeria and coordinator of Spotlight Initiative, Edward Cullen, said this is a global, multi-year partnership between the European Union and the United Nations to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls by 2030. Kaduna State workers will blaze the trail next week when the government institutes the new minimum wage. The State Executive Council approved payment of the new national minimum wage and consequential adjustments to civil servants on Monday to begin from September the 1st. Special Advisor to the Governor on Media and Communication, Muyiwa Adekeye, explained in a statement that the Executive Council deliberated on and approved the new minimum wage memo and unanimously approved September as the commencement date for implementation in a bid to deliver quality and responsive public service. The Executive Council says it desires to improve the standard of living of workers in the state. It further stated that it was guided by results of its study of the government's ability to pay and the sustainability of the plan. A major aid in reaching the conclusion to implement the new minimum wage was the trend of internally generated revenues and federal account allocations. The council says this move will increase the state's wage bill by 1/3, bringing its monthly salary payments to nearly 4 billion naira. And currently, the state pays almost 3 billion. The issue of religion in Nigeria is delicate. Everyone knows that. A lack of wisdom in dealing with it could plunge any community or state into chaos and violence. This must have informed Rivers State's Governor Nyesom Wike's handling of a potentially hot issue of the purported demolition of a Port Harcourt mosque. An Islamic rights organization, Muslim Rights Concern, MIRIC, has tried to lay the responsibility for the purported demolition on the governor, who has distanced himself from claims that he ordered the demolition of the Trans Amadi Central Mosque in the state capital. The governor says there was no mosque on ground there, so nothing could have been demolished. He described the story as fake news. He said many prominent Nigerians even called him on the story that had been circulating online. Wike said he had gone with journalists to the site mentioned as location of the mosque and there was no mosque there. Governor Wike said the story was made up by mischief makers to score cheap points.
Coming up, African news. Weekend of bloodshed in English-speaking Cameroon regions claims 40 lives. Tens of thousands flee. And later, international news. Brazil to reject $22 million aid fund from G7 countries.
You are watching ANN.
Dear Mommy, you went out that night with the baby in your tummy, but you did not come back. The baby is very fine and she eats and sleeps a lot. Everyone says that you are in a better place, but I miss you so much. I keep asking them, where is the better place? But nobody answers me. Auntie Carrie just hugs me and says, go and play. Mommy, I miss you. Please, when are you coming home?
I still do miss you, Mom. And in honor of your memory, I'm a doctor today working with the MTN Foundation to save mothers and children every day.
Ending mother and child mortality in Nigeria is dear to us. We will keep strengthening this most important bond just for you.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to African stories. Cameroon's English-speaking regions have had their hopes dashed. The schools would reopen this week after a 3-year closure. The conflict-prone regions had a weekend of bloodshed in which tens of thousands of people have fled. Fighting between the military and separatists has claimed 40 lives. A prominent Catholic bishop was also abducted. This new fighting erupted after a military tribunal ordered life imprisonment for separatist leaders. A bus company in the northwestern town of Bamenda in the English-speaking region says it has been overwhelmed with thousands of travelers leaving the area in the past week. African women entrepreneurs will soon have access to financial support, as French President Emmanuel Macron says, and the African Development Bank have launched a $300 million initiative to boost businesses owned by African women. The initiative was announced at the just concluded G7 summit in Biarritz, France. It is aimed at increasing credit access to African business women across the continent over a 5-year period. Popular Benin singer Angelique Kidjo, a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador who has been promoting the African Development Bank's initiative, has been instrumental in working with Macron to coordinate the project. The African Development Bank says 77% of African women do not have access to the financial sector. It says the loss to the economy because of gender inequality in sub-Saharan Africa is estimated to be $2.5 trillion. Egypt is planning to move all its government offices out of Cairo to a new administrative capital by next year. The new administrative capital is a large-scale project under construction since 2015 and is located 45 kilometers east of Cairo. Reporter Yazir Hakim has the details.
He is a government employee who had been serving the state for years. Like tens of thousands of similar cases, he will be relocated into the new administrative capital east of Cairo in 2020.
I approve the idea so we can live in a calmer environment with better facilities, especially if we are provided with housing units by the government close to the new offices. This will save a lot of headache with transportation, schools and daily errands for my family in the administrative capital.
Though he will have to leave behind his relatives, longtime neighbors and friends, he believes it could be a positive transition.
It's definitely going to be better than where we live in Cairo now because it's new, developed with modern schools and streets. These are better living conditions overall.
Government ministries are expected to move out, in addition to parliament, presidency and diplomatic missions.
The aim is to free up the massively overpopulated capital. Modern Cairo has been developed more than a century ago to host around 5 or 6 million people. But now there are over 20 million living there.
In its first stage, the government targets 30% of Cairo residents to relocate into the high-tech, futuristic, smart administrative capital.
المميزات اللي محطوطة في العاصمة الإدارية والبنية التحتية.
You have the modern buildings, the highly advanced technological infrastructure placed in the city. There is also a green river passing through the city, creating environmental friendly surroundings. You're building a new community with a new vision, and it's linked by all modes of transportation with the rest of the country.
But what will become of the old capital, Cairo?
The plans are to restore Cairo to its original beauty as a cultural, historical and touristic destination. Downtown Cairo, for example, will have a major facelift to renovate all the historic buildings, roads and alleys. Cairo will restore its famous image of the past.
It's an ambitious project that could cost over $45 billion. But the government is adamant this will create a better future for the coming generations.
When we return, international news. Brazil to reject $22 million aid fund from G7 countries. And later, sport. Flying Eagles face Mali for final slot at the ongoing African Games.
You are watching ANN.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to international stories. The Amazon rainforest fires are still blazing. The world is concerned about global impact of the fires, and the G7 countries have offered $20 million to help Brazil in the fight to quench the fires. Well, Brazil says it would reject the offer. French President Emmanuel Macron said on Monday during the G7 summit in France that the group comprising the US, Japan, Germany, France, Italy, Britain and Canada would donate $22 million to help tackle the blazes. Britain and Canada on their own part also pledged $12 million and $11 million respectively. Macron says the funds are available and that France would also offer military support in the region. Brazilian Environment Minister Ricardo Salles had earlier welcomed the G7 funding, but the Brazilian government changed its mind after Bolsonaro met with his ministers. Meanwhile, Brazilians were not just going to sit down and let everything burn over in the Amazon rainforest. More than 30 protests took place across Brazil over the weekend to voice their outrage over the scorching of the Amazon. Thousands of demonstrators marched along Ipanema Beach, chanting, "The Amazon stays, out with Bolsonaro." Reporter Lucrecia Franco was there.
Fires have been detected in Brazil's Amazon rainforest. Anti-government protests in defense of the world's largest tropical rainforest are taking place across the country and outside Brazilian diplomatic missions around the world. Protesters, including artists and activists here in Rio, are blaming President Jair Bolsonaro's pro-agribusiness policies for the unprecedented crisis. Bolsonaro initially blamed NGOs for the fires, saying they wanted to discredit him. According to Brazil's Space Climate Monitoring Agency, more than 1,000 new fires were spotted between Thursday and Friday. Under growing national and international pressure, Bolsonaro ordered the army to tackle the fires, and military aircraft are now dumping water on the massive blazes. Criticism of the government among Brazilians remains widespread.
We are defending the environmental cause against the policies and the rhetoric that is being articulated by the current government.
It's the destruction of our forest, of our life and our medicine, because the Amazon is our mother, the mother of all of us. It's the air we breathe. It's the lungs of the world.
I think he's pretending to combat the fires, but the ideology that has caused the fires and that will continue to fuel the destruction of the Amazon at the expense of all of humanity will necessarily continue, because it's something very fundamental to the entire Bolsonaro movement.
Official monitoring recorded more than 70,000 forest fires in Brazil this year, an 84% increase over the same period in 2018. More than half were in the Amazon region, and scientists suspect most were deliberately set to clear land for cattle and crops. Rarely have Brazilians united in protest over climate change in the ways they have these last days. But with Amazon fires out of control and international condemnation threatening trade agreements and boycotts of Brazilian beef, there is now an added economic dimension to the crisis.
Iranian President Hassan Rouhani says his country will not talk to the United States until all sanctions imposed on Tehran are lifted. President Rouhani said this a day after U.S. President Trump said he would meet with Rouhani to try to end a confrontation over Tehran's 2015 nuclear deal. Rouhani says in a televised speech that the U.S. must retreat from what he described as all illegal, unjust and wrong sanctions against the nation of Iran. Iran's economy has been battered by sanctions that were reimposed after Trump pulled out last May from a 2015 nuclear deal between Tehran and world powers. The landmark accord offered Iran relief from global sanctions in exchange for curbs on its nuclear program.
Up next, sports. Flying Eagles face Mali for final slot at the ongoing African Games. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow the story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In sport, the Flying Eagles will file out against Mali in the semi-final of the football event of the 12th Africa Games in Morocco. Nigeria qualified for the semi-finals after placing second in Group B with 5 points behind Burkina Faso, who garnered 7 points to come on top. They secured their qualification with a 2-2 draw against host Morocco on Friday. Nigeria's track star Blessing Okagbare has been disqualified in Heat 1 of the women's 100 meters semi-final race for a false start. Before being disqualified, Nigeria's fastest athletes in the women's 100 meter had a good run in Heat 3, clocking 11.53 seconds to place first. The final of the men's and women's 100 meters events will hold today, Tuesday. Okagbare has apologized to her fans, saying that she showed up at the competition to give her best. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.